Joining us now is Representative Neal Dunn, the congressman serving the 2nd District of Florida. So, Congressman, your state is one that's starting to reopen. Slowly but surely, businesses in the area are starting to once again continue business. New York has been very different than Florida, for example. We've seen two different approaches, but now we kind of see a similar end result. Both states trying to reopen, as I was saying. Do you think that's the right move at the right time?
No question. The vast majority of Florida geographically has very little of the coronavirus illness. We're ready to go back to work. People are grateful for the opportunity. And, obviously we'll isolate the vulnerable, isolate the sick, but, everybody else wants to get back to work.
And that's the strategy, actually, that Governor Cuomo has been criticized a little bit for, the idea that he didn't isolate the vulnerable community, that being the nursing homes. In fact, he allowed a lot of individuals with coronavirus to go back to those nursing homes. That's caused a lot of controversy as to how to handle this situation. Of course, Governor Ron DeSantis had his own controversy when he was a little bit slow to close down beaches. But now we see right now that Florida doesn't necessarily have the same surge that a lot of people were predicting. Do you think that's a testament to the idea that maybe these social distancing measures aren't as effective as initially thought?
No, I think social distancing actually is going to help us through this infection and other flus in the future. So I think that the learning to do the old elbow bump and I think that those are good measures. I'm curious if we really think that everybody wearing a mask helps. But I guess it just adds confidence to the equation.
No, I think you're right. And in fact, that's part of it, is instilling confidence in people so that when businesses do reopen, they feel confident going to a restaurant, for example, or to a movie theater. Because if people aren't confident, even if businesses reopen, the economy is not going to climb back. People also have to be very confident that this coronavirus pandemic is curbed for the most part and that the government knows what they're doing. And speaking of that, you're on the Agriculture Committee, and we've heard some concerns that there may be food shortages in the near future. Are you fearing those same type of concerns? Are you fearful that maybe for example, beef, I think was one thing that was mentioned that might be in shortage?
So literally minutes ago, I got off a call with one of the subcommittees on the agriculture. There will not be a shortage of nutrition. There will be a shortage of certain select types of food that we're used to having available to us widely. But the nutrition will be available to everybody.
See, that's good to hear, because a lot of times when you read these reports, a lot of people just read headlines and see those food shortages and think that we're just a couple days away from, I don't know, all-out violence taking place for food. And I'm glad to hear that's not necessarily the case. But
no more panic buying, please. No
exactly. I mean, if toilet paper was one thing, I think people are going to be a little bit more violent if it comes to food shortages. But you yourself have had coronavirus. You've been diagnosed. You've overcome it, which is good news. We're happy to hear that you're healthy and safe. But can you speak a little bit about what that experience was like for yourself?
Yeah, I think my experience was really very much more typical than the people that you see in the hospital and don't get all the write-ups. I mean, I was sick for about 18 hours, immediately well. I was already back to work before I got my positive test result, which surprised me and my doctor. So I think that's a fairly typical course of the illness, much more typical than, ending up on a ventilator and all these things. And believe me, as a doctor, I can get pretty wonkish about how you treat coronavirus. Probably don't want to go there.
Yeah, well, actually, speaking of that, I know that you are a surgeon as well. So I want to ask you a little bit, when it comes to the medical component of this coronavirus outbreak, we continue to learn more about it every day. What is your big takeaway from it from a medical perspective? Is it something that you've never seen before? Is it something more typical? What would you say it's like?
No, so I actually would like to have everybody just take a deep breath and compare this epidemic to the epidemic of Hong Kong flu, 1968-69. That was influenza A. It's still with us all the time. It surfaces as a seasonal flu in the winter. The flu vaccine you get every year, about half the year's influenza A is one of the combination valences on that flu vaccine. So Hong Kong flu killed 100,000 Americans. It killed 1 million people worldwide. Most people really have a hard time remembering the Hong Kong flu. That's when we landed on the moon. I think, as a better comparison, this isn't the bubonic plague. This isn't the Spanish flu, which was, by the way, also a Chinese flu, as was the Hong Kong flu. It came from Wuhan, China, not Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to get through this. It's going to be with us as a seasonal flu virus next year too.
And in fact, the Hong Kong flu, I saw a lot of reports over the weekend comparing it to what's happening at this time, for example, and Woodstock was taking place at the very same time where that outbreak was
That's
happening.
right.
So we don't exactly see concerts being canceled back then the same way that they are right now. And to the point that you were
Imagine
making,
if we hadn't had Woodstock.
what a terrible time to be alive. What's even the point? But what you were saying about the other countries as well, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also putting more blame on China, saying this isn't the first time where we've seen a disease come out of China, not only from a wet market as well. There's been several different instances of that in the past. So I think we're going to see some accountability when it comes to that as well. But Representative Dunn, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for coming on tonight.